Hi, I'm Ellen Kornfeld. I'm speaking today from Jerusalem, Israel, where I've lived since 1983. I was brought up in the northeast of America with a very strong sense of belonging to the traditional Jewish community that embraced me. At the same time, I was very much immersed in American culture. The music, the clothing trends, the yearning to belong to the group. As a young girl, I remember new ideas in literature and the media from Betty Friedan and Gloria Steinem. These were all exciting ideas. But I remember, even at that young age, feeling distant from them. I felt a pressure on me that these were the new values, that someone was telling me once again what to be. And when I think back now, I like that I recognize that I was uncomfortable and something was not right for me. As a teen, that's pretty good to remember knowing yourself like that. When I reach back for memories, I remember my father saying to me in high school, "It's important your brother go to college. For you, it's not so important because you're going to get married and be supported by your husband." I was seething inside, feeling I'm entitled to whatever because I am me, but I didn't know how to engage him in a conversation about it. I also see now that his outlook had been deeply ingrained in me nonetheless, but that's another conversation. As a young married woman showing the signs of my first pregnancy, I began to work at Transition House, a shelter for battered women in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I manned the hotline, took intakes of the new women and their children, and occasionally accompanied them to court. This was very exciting work for me, yet not without some confusing experiences. I was aware that I might be considered a privileged, educated white woman. I was aware that I was having important conversations with a very diverse group of women, both those seeking shelter and the staff. Of course, this was long before my narrative days. Covering my hair under a hat for religious reasons never elicited any questions about my beliefs or my lifestyle. And true, I didn't share much about it. I was aware of a very strong feminist narrative on the part of the women that ran the shelter. Cambridge, Mass. Was a hotbed of feminist activity in 1979. Things like marriage or staying at home with a baby were not part of the narrative. It didn't seem user-friendly to my Orthodox Jewish lifestyle with its emphasis on traditional family roles and large families. But it was my narrative, amongst others. I felt a bit like a visitor into a new, fast-moving culture and felt it a bit coercive. And then I gave birth and brought my tiny daughter Tirza into the shelter with me. The staff was curious about her name, and I shared the origins of it. In the Torah, which is the Old Testament in Hebrew, Moses was sharing the laws of inheritance with the people. In explaining how inheritance would be distributed only through the patriarchal line, he was challenged by 5 daughters of a man named Zelophehad, who had died leaving no sons to inherit. The Torah explains how very learned these women were and about their passion for the land of Israel, which prompted them to question why they could not be the rightful inheritors of their family's land. This question humbled Moses. He didn't know the answer. And he turned to God. God told Moses that indeed these 5 sisters were correct. We learn here, because of the sisters finding their voices, the laws of inheritance grew to a more embracing story for women. The Torah is always very careful about its use of words and stories. The text is telling me the story had a very powerful message in womanhood. I'd looked forward to giving birth to daughters so that I could use some of the names of the sisters. This was such an important story for me and encompassed so many important dreams for me and my hopes for my own daughters. To be learned, to hold spirituality and religious practice dear, to speak up to injustices, to bring social change honoring peoples and their heritages. The women at the shelter were very moved by this story. Perhaps that interchange, so long ago, began a growing interest in those intersections of religion, religious culture, and the broader discourses we all bump into in our lives, and not only as women, but men also. I went on to give birth to 7 more children and stayed home to raise them because I wanted to, because it was important to me to be that kind of mother. For many years, I had to stave off comments about going out to work, or what do you do all day, or aren't you bored? As though I had no brains left in my head, or I wasn't liberated. When my youngest child was a baby, due to some traumatic family stories, I was forced to go out to work. I took notice in how people saw me in a different light once I was a working woman. It definitely got me thinking about how we judge women's lives and based on what. It was such a love affair, a relief when narrative ideas found me 16 years ago here in Israel. We were a perfect fit. I'm not only a mother and wife, but also a grandmother now, and I work in private practice here in Jerusalem. My inner travels of being my kind of woman are continually being challenged and are pushing my personal choices daily. Just this year, I listened to my spontaneous female voice and completed the master's program in Australia. In my workspace, I'm passionate about collaborating with my clients to make what is meaningful for them visible to themselves and those who matter to them. Like finding their voices. Each time I work with a couple and hear a husband reflect back on the power of his wife's words and what it gets him thinking, well, that touches men and moves them. Every son who witnesses a stronger mother brings what we call in Hebrew, tikkun olam, fixing the world. And I didn't mention how this affects our daughters too, growing the possibilities instead of the limitations. As Vicki Reynolds said in her video, we aren't to tell women who they are or who to be. My daughter Tirza and I recently had a conversation about her pursuing her career while her son went to daycare. I'm not like you, Ima, that's mother in Hebrew, not wanting to leave us as babies. I can leave him, and I don't miss him. I'm fine. Instead of being flustered and passing quickly on to another topic, as I might have in the past, I responded to her. Tirza, we are very much alike. Silence. She looked at me quizzically. I said, we were, or are, both doing what we want, what is important to us. I am sure she had never heard me speak like this with so much conviction. She was moved. I feel like we have all begun this conversation. Watching all of your videos gave me the impetus to sit down and develop this thus far. I appreciated that many of you shared what you were thinking, doing, what you're wondering, questioning. Initially, I thought, well, what do I have to say about feminism? I guess I found something to begin to say. My daughter Tiferet said to me yesterday, that's why I like to see this not as feminism, but as feminisms. I look forward to hearing more about how you accompany women in developing the meanings of being a woman in your context. Thanks a lot for listening, and let's thank Cheryl for getting this going. Good day.